Q&A and all that?
Yes, I have it turned on.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike, when you create the event, you can add the trailer in the Q&A right then. You can enable them then. That's when I usually do it. So that one time we didn't have it, I had forgotten. I had posted it somewhere, then you posted it in the right place, and I had forgotten to enable it before I started. That's how we missed it that time. So.
We missed what now?
And we had one time we didn't have the Q&A up.
Oh yeah.
Since that's happened, I make a note to look at it before I hit start. All right. Everybody recording, ready to roll?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Looking good.
count us down, buddy.
On the count of 3, I want you to say brains.
Can I say cliche?
Sure.
Jonathan Colton. Oh, what? That's wrong.
1, 2, 3.
Brains. All right. Hello and welcome to the Irreverent Skeptics podcast. I'm your host, John Ombie, and joining me today in my post-apocalyptic survival bunker are Brandy Madison.
Hi.
Erno.
Here, I am here.
Michael McElroy.
Game over, man!
Mike Bowler.
Hello, everyone.
And back from the road, Dumbass.
Hey, happy to join you for the end of the world.
All right, since Brandy and Dumbass were on assignment recently, I'd like to hear your findings while you were on location. So tell us about what you learned, Dumbass.
Well, I was away in Orlando, Florida, and I learned that the most magical place on Earth can be a real pain when it's a really hot day.
An abundance of whiny children, I imagine.
And drunk people.
Just my nephew, but well, there were a bunch of other kids around, but.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brandy, did you learn anything while you were on location last
I don't have much to report, honestly. Here in frosty Pennsylvania, we're just now barely getting spring, so I've been taking a lot of pictures and doing a lot of nothing. A lot of cleaning and getting rid of things, and that's it, really. Nothing to report.
You're still organizing your intel. Gotcha.
All right. We'll say yes. Yes.
All right, well, today we're going to discuss everyone's favorite cannibalistic, flesh-consuming monstrosity, the zombie. Is there life after undeath? How can I keep up an active social life while avoiding the rampaging zombie hordes and fighting off invading bands of survivors desperate for food and basic necessities? Good God, that was a long sentence. We'll find out, or maybe not. Whatever.
So, a little bit of history about zombies. The origin of the concept of zombieism stems from stems from Haitian voodoo culture. The word zombie, which in Haitian was just zombie with no E at the end, in the original Haitian it meant spirit of the dead. And according to voodoo folklore, a bokor is a kind of voodoo priest who studied and used black magic, and they could use their knowledge to resurrect the dead. For a little more information about the science behind zombieism and what the bokors actually do, and whether or not the techniques they use work, I would recommend listening to Brian Dunning's Skeptoid episode on the subject. It was really excellent. He went to great depth. He broke the concept down this concept of this toxic powder that they use to put people into a trance, and whether or not it would actually work to put someone in a catatonic state that could be confused for death, and exactly what the science has to say about it.
I bet that's not really true.
If I recall, there was a really good How Stuff Works episode on zombies where they talked about that same thing. Yeah, I remember listening to that a couple years back. So in a 2012 essay for the New York Times, Amy Willents described zombie lore as an extension of old African religious beliefs that had followed slaves of the French-run pre-independence Haiti. The zombie was essentially a slave trapped in a never-ending existence of servitude with no possibility of returning to Africa to rest in peace, which was part of the lore of their culture. Was when you died, you returned to Longini, they called it. So suicide was a really common occurrence in slaves who wished to be free of the brutality of near starvation, extreme overwork, and cruel discipline on the Haitian plantations. Suicide was seen as the only way for a slave to take control over his or her own body. And from her essay, it says, "The zombie is a dead person who cannot get across to Longini, the final rest in green, leafy, heavenly Africa, with no sugarcane to cut, no master to appease or serve, is unavailable to the zombie." To become a zombie was the slave's worst nightmare, to be dead and still a slave, an eternal field hand. It is thought that slave drivers on the plantations, who were usually slaves themselves and sometimes voodoo priests, used this fear of zombification to keep recalcitrant slaves in order and to warn those who were despondent not to go too far. And again, I can't English. The more conventional ideas of zombies have sprung from books and films, which we'll talk about more in a bit.
So, how feasible are zombies in real life? That's something that very feasible. Yeah. Okay. Well, plain and simple. Once a human body dies and the blood stops pumping, it's not going to keep working, and that's kind of what death is when the body stops working. So the muscles need oxygen to function, among other things. There's all sorts of nutrients and electrical energy going on that's just not going to work. When you have no circulation, no brain activity, they're not going to get what they need. The muscles aren't going to get what they need to function. So even if there were still some sort of spark of life somehow in the zombie, the muscles aren't going to work. It's not going to be able to move. So your traditional, actual undead zombie, they're fantasy. There's no way they can work in reality. But we can't let that spoil our fun, because we have a whole episode to do, and there's a lot more to zombies than just the undead zombies. But
couldn't you have like a person who's diseased with something like rabies, let's say some kind of super rabies that just makes you bite on things, preferably something that's living?
We will cover that later.
There's also the question of how they'd get the energy to keep on moving. Like, especially like in the Max Planck zombies, I know it made a point of saying that they eat, but they don't even digest their food. So how do they even get energy to keep moving?
Yeah. But so let's see, your traditional undead zombies, they're just not going to survive for long in real life. Even if they could, let's bypass all the stuff about they can't metabolize, there's no oxygen going to the muscles, all that. Even if we're going to say somehow that these are rotting dead people who are still moving around, there's so much going against them. Not only would they just start falling apart, but I mean, they would be terrible at spreading their infection because of the limitations that they have. There's a huge number of factors that are working against them. Things like decomposition, natural predators, the temperature changes, the terrain, human emergency response plans, and, of course, people with weapons. Duh.
And also the tendency to dance really funny, choreographed, chasing after Michael Jackson, etc.
Yeah, you'd think that they'd be more focused on other people than just him.
Mm-hmm. Him and that girl, yeah.
Going back to what you said a minute ago about not being able to digest nutrients, as anyone who's listened to episode 120 of Cognitive Dissonance knows, zombies would have the clinkers, and that's a bad thing. I'd like to be nominated for best tie-in ever on that one. Thank you. So on the subject of decomposition and predators, if you bury a body in a coffin deep in the ground, it could take as long as 50 years for all the tissue to disappear. But if a body remains exposed to the elements, it will decay very quickly. Exposure to air or water will speed up the process of decomposition dramatically because of the presence of bacteria. Animals and insects will feed on the tissue if a body is exposed, which also speeds up the process, obviously. Flies that land on a corpse will each lay up to 300 eggs on it that will hatch within a day. The maggots that come from the eggs will start on the outside of the body, and within a day's time they will burrow deep into the corpse. The maggots, moving as a single mass, will feed on decaying flesh and spread enzymes that speed the decay of the body, and also they can consume up to 60% of a human body in under 7 days. Which is pretty impressive.
All things considered, flies alone are probably going to take out most zombies within the first week of a zombie plague.
But as everybody knows, flies are in cahoots with zombies, so that would not happen.
Is this another aspect of the big garter snake conspiracy I'm hearing here?
Possibly.
Possible.
Hey, has anybody else noticed that in The Walking Dead they must be making their clothes out of tissue paper?
Yeah. Also in The Walking Dead, nice manicured lawns everywhere for an apocalypse having been on for so long.
Modern vehicles to sell to all the viewers.
I mean, those zombies can fight through a pair of jeans or whatever, like, easily. Rotting teeth, no problem, just...
Oh, yeah, that reminds me, there's a book I read recently by Colson Whitehead called Zone 1, which is a zombie apocalypse survival book, in that the survivalists especially the ones who were tasked with either destroying or cleaning out the zombie infestations, had clothes that were a particular fiber mesh that made them very bite resistant. Thought that was an interesting idea.
Like
Yeah, it's pretty
Kevlar.
Sort of, but it was really light. It was more lightweight and flexible, I suppose. It's a fiction book, so whatever.
Well, just regular denim should be pretty much bite-proof by human bites anyway.
Yeah, I would think so. So, hey, Mike, how about temperature as a problem?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously going to be a problem. When you have a dead body, they don't respond to temperature the way we do, because, living people, our bodies regulate our internal temperature. But with a dead body, in extreme cold, for example, the tissues of the body are going to start freezing and going through frostbite and basically freezer burn. But it's the same thing that happens in a living person, but it's exaggerated because the cells have stopped functioning with the repair mechanisms that are going to build them back up and repair all the damage, which isn't exactly conducive to a lot of walking around and brain munching, obviously. In extreme heat, the process of decomposition speeds up, and you're at a point where within a short period of time the zombies won't have enough functioning muscle tissue to move around, let alone gnaw on a guy's arm or his skull. So
you're telling me basically my initial plan when I met John, my plan zombie survival-wise was to head to Michigan. So that sounds like a plan because it is extreme hot and extreme cold. So if you have an August or a December as your choice, then the zombies will not make it that far north. That's perfect. I told you I was right. See what you're saying? I was right. That's cool.
Yeah. See, and when you're in the heat, there's when a human body decomposes, there's all sorts of gases that get released by bacteria and parasites and whatever that are in the decomposition process. And when you're in heat, this buildup happens faster, and inevitably a body exposed to the elements that's intact will rupture because of the gas buildup. They're like the gut will explode, or some body parts explode open. So you're gonna have a bunch of zombies that within a week or so have been mostly eaten by flies and exploded.
Yeah, I think in The Walking Dead they actually utilized the fact that the zombies would freeze over the winter, and they did some foraging during the winter months.
Have they shown the winter in the TV show yet? I know that in the comics they definitely had that going on.
I don't think there's been a winter in the TV series. I'm not sure though.
Here's a good point to be made. So you have this buildup of decomposition gases in the zombies, and you've yet to see a farting zombie in a movie or show. It's like, just like as it's walking along, just like, roar!
Irreverent Skeptics, classy skepticism.
I'd also like to make a note that, as Brandy said, when we first met, and we discussed our zombie plan, that happened when we first met. So.
John, you have a huge fucking spider on your wall behind you, to your right. I just saw it crawling, or other side. I just saw it crawling. It was visible.
Oh no, it's a moth. It's not a spider.
Okay. Phew.
It's now buzzing a boot. That's okay if it was. I'm not afraid of them. I would just take it outside.
Maybe it's a zombie moth. It'll infect you with zombie
Good
spores.
God.
Oh,
what am I gonna do? We should probably talk about terrain. So
yes.
On that, a zombie plague would require a large victim population to sustain itself. And if there aren't many people around, the infected can decay to the point of deactivation before they manage to infect a lot of others. So a zombie outbreak would likely be most successful in larger population centers like cities and metropolises. Is that a real word, metropolises?
Yes. Large.
Metropolisi?
Metropoliolios.
One stoplight towns are probably going to be okay. If there's a problem for our brain-chewing friends in the big cities, we've designed them with the people's ability to see in mind. Within 24 hours of death, human eyes lose much of their internal pressure, so good old Mr. Zombie is going to have some trouble navigating a city with partially deflated eyes. His vision will be obscured at best and totally useless at worst. Combine this with the fact that their brains are decaying and their sense of balance probably isn't working, and you're not going to see a lot of particularly coordinated or even upright ghouls. Probably be safe if you went up a few floors and into a tall building. I guess reasonably speaking, yeah, but we all know that zombies have means to get around all of that. Just saying.
Tricksy zombies.
Anyhow.
Are we assuming Walking Dead zombies, so they're attracted by sound?
We are not at the moment. We're taking.
I am, for the purpose of the notes that I took here. Basically, I was thinking of a scenario like The Walking Dead, except applying actual science to the zombies and seeing what would happen if somehow the dead came back to life in the real world, ignoring all the unreal aspects of the fact that they came back to life in the first place. What would happen to a walking corpse that decayed at the normal expected rate, and all the normal things happened to it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was just curious. I mean, maybe the person at home, speaking for the person at home, like, okay, what kind of thing or critter are we assuming? So, that makes sense. Walking Dead is something we're familiar with.
We see some of the problems with the larger metropolitan areas. What about smaller population centers?
Yeah, well, even in smaller population centers, you're going to have landscape that's not exactly suitable for letting blind, brain-damaged corpses wreak a lot of havoc. Because, I mean, if you're in a small town, there's generally a much lower population density, which means you have a lot of open space and not so many people. It'd be hard for a horde to form that you couldn't escape. You'd pretty much have to be unlucky enough to get overwhelmed in the backwater. You have to be really unlucky to get overwhelmed in a backwater town of, say, Michigan, for example, where I grew up, where your nearest neighbor is a quarter mile or so away, and there's nothing but open fields between you and them. I mean, even if 100 zombies came trundling across this farmland, you could pretty much hop in your pickup truck and be on your way before you have much of a hassle.
Sure, and it being flat, you can see forever.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Forever.
I mean, maybe you could get in trouble if you didn't know some coming, but the odds of something like this not popping on TV news or the radio are pretty slim. So,
and every random house will be armed to the teeth, so you're never going to be short of weapons.
Yes, the low population centers in America tend to be places where you'll have a lot of weapons.
And also, as anyone who is from or familiar with small towns would know, the instant one person is infected, the gossip about that will spread faster than lightning. So
oh my God, yeah.
Everyone will know immediately.
In fact, we'll have heard about it before it actually happened.
Yeah, and pretty much the Mythbusters tested this on their. They had a track where they basically made made a track with different population densities, and even in a population density equivalent of, well, zombie population density equivalent of Calcutta or something like a huge Indian city where it's really crammed, even then they could just run through the mass when it was just like a kind of random placement of the zombies.
Yeah. So the idea of that you're going to be in a lot of trouble in a small town is not very likely, because stuff you hear about this stuff very quickly, either from other people or from official notices on the news, which of course brings us to
emergency response plans. Contrary to what you see in most zombie movies, where everyone panics and makes the dumbest decisions possible, in the real world, people tend to be much more organized and thoughtful in response to emergencies. Bullshit. Even emergencies that hit harder than people might be expecting. The day before Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, the government issued a mandatory evacuation notice to the citizens. By nightfall, about 80 to 90% of the citizens had already evacuated safely. Some 112,000 of the city's 500,000 people didn't have access to a car. Of these, about 10,000 ended up taking shelter in the Superdome, and another 10,000 or so rode the storm out at home. The Coast Guard wound up rescuing 34,000 people, and ordinary citizens organized themselves to provide boats for evacuation, as well as food and shelter for the people they rescued. The response to Hurricane Katrina is generally held up as an example of a failed government planning. Nearly 2,000 people died, and New Orleans still hasn't truly recovered. 7 years later, in 2012, the population of New Orleans had only just returned to 81% of pre-Katrina levels. However, the situation also shows how well people can respond to a disaster. On a side note, the CDC has a zombie apocalypse survival guide website. They made it as an entertaining way to get people thinking about how they should prepare for and respond to a serious emergency.
And it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it is, and what they say, I think towards the end of the article, the page, whatever, is that if you were prepared in this way, you'd also be prepared for different natural disasters and whatnot.
Yeah. So. What I think was great about that, when that first popped up, people were thinking, "Oh my God! Even the CDC says there's zombies coming."
Right.
Wow.
Well, when that guy got his face chewed off in Florida, was it? There was some guy, a homeless guy or whatever, got his face chewed off. I have to say, it at least flashed in my head as like, "Oh my God, it's happening!"
Is it? No.
I wasn't panicked, but it at least flashed in my head that is not a thing that you usually hear on the news.
I remember hearing about that and thinking, "Seen this come for 15 years."
Not to mention that we have organizations that are pretty much organized against any attempt of attacking them, which
I
would
kind of feel.
be militaries and police
Oh yeah,
stations and
definitely.
such.
Especially in the backwaters of Michigan.
I was about to say I kind of want to live in Michigan if this was happening because of all the militias that are going around there.
Speaking of militias, they have a lot of weapons and guns.
Yes, they do. Yeah, basically, it's one of the big things about a zombie apocalypse is that a dead body can't repair any damage. Can't repair any damage that you do to it. It kind of goes without saying, really. I mean, so we now we can compound a bunch of decaying, near-blind corpses that are stumbling around ineffectively, trying to find a single victim in a mostly evacuated area. We can combine that with the fact that people who don't evacuate are most likely armed to defend themselves. Guns, knives, baseball bats, golf clubs, chainsaws, basically anything humans could use to fight off the bumbling undead hordes would leave them permanently damaged. So, moreover, any wounds that they open up in the zombies would just add new holes for parasites and bacteria to enter into, which would make them decompose even faster. I mean, weapons could even permanently disable a zombie without even killing it. The whole aim for the head thing is kind of redundant when you think about it, because if you take out a zombie's legs, it'll have to crawl after you. And considering that these things would be stumbling around and tripping all over the place anyway, they might even show you the courtesy of already being on the ground, at which point a swift kick to the head would probably do it in.
Not to mention that the escaping gases from the wounds you make with your gun or a weapon would probably attract even more flies.
Yes.
It's not the moaning that lets you know they're coming.
It's the smell.
They'd also have to deal with all those hostile plants shooting pea shooters at them and stuff.
Yeah. Gotta love our pea friends for that.
Oh, we've run the gamut now.
So, of course, this whole time we've been talking about the whole actual rotting corpse zombie, which puts a lot of limitations on what they're capable of doing, because a dead body isn't going to last very long exposed to the elements and being attacked by living people. But
eventually they would be mere skeletons.
Yeah, I mean...
and skeletons are easier to kill in D&D.
It takes quite a while for all the tissue to decay if it's buried, but if it's out in the elements, like John said earlier, that it can be skeletonized pretty quickly. And then, a skeleton is not going to be able to do anything. But there are, of course, other kinds of zombies.
So what if we're dealing with other kind of zombies? In some movies, for instance, the zombies are actually just living people who have been infected with some disease or parasite that takes over their brains. In this case, the rules are all different. A horde of infected is a much bigger challenge.
Right.
Yeah, and often I find those to be more exciting.
Yeah.
Those are not technically
movies.
zombies, but those are so scary in that movie. So scary.
Predation, decay, temperature, and terrain will be much less of a problem. When it comes to those factors, the infected would be on about equal footing with the uninfected as long as the infection doesn't damage the brain too severely. Lots of books and movies show packs of infected moving and thinking as a hive mind as well, which could make things more difficult for people trying to carry out any kind of emergency response plan.
Especially if they are aware of the memories of the people they infected.
Yes.
And if they're magical zombies, we'll basically forget everything we've just said. There are no rules. Magic's magic, so...
That's when you use your magic missile and lightning bolt spell.
Well,
I'm attacking.
what is that? Is that 28
Magic
days
missile.
later? What one is that where they're super fast and infected with rage?
Yeah, that's 28
days
days and
later.
28
Those
weeks
are
later.
scary because of how fast they move. So terrifying.
And people convert within seconds of any sort of body fluid coming into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the guy has a drop of zombie blood fall onto his eye, and within 10 seconds he's converted.
Yeah, it spreads like an STD. It just needs a mucous membrane, and that's it. It's on. But yeah, those are especially terrifying because they're super fast moving. I don't know if we're going to get to this, but it's worth bringing up. People have this hesitation of having to, for instance, kill someone that used to be their mom 45 seconds ago, but that has to be what has to happen. So that hesitation, that human sort of stupidity and resistance in that moment, that is a huge obstacle.
Yeah, it could be. You're right. Yeah, I think that when I was talking about weapons earlier, it's much easier just to fight off a zombie that's some stranger, than, say your parents or your siblings, children. Yeah.
And speaking of the magical zombies, I believe they do 1d6 plus 1 damage, plus 2 melee damage.
And they can give you some kind of a disease. I think it's zombie rot or something.
For the
Zombie rot. That sounds like an STD.
That was a Dungeons and Dragons reference. I'm sure our audience probably knows that though.
I am all too aware that that was
all-
a D&D reference. Oh
All
my
one and a half of
gosh.
our audience is like, oh, I identify with that.
Oh, I'm a paladin.
Don't go there.
No, I already made that mistake.
So let's talk about some zombies in popular culture, shall we? I guess we already kind of have, but we'll expand on it a bit. Victor Halperin's White Zombie was released in 1932 and is often cited to be the first zombie film. In the
I actually
movie,
read that it was actually cited as the first feature-length horror movie of any kind, which is kind of amazing.
And not to be confused with the bad White Zombie.
No.
and that was a tank rolling by my window just now.
What?
In the movie, Bela Lugosi portrays a voodoo priest who falls for a woman and turns her husband into a zombie in an attempt to win her affection. I thought it was the other way around. Maybe I was wrong. I was thinking he turned her into a zombie.
I think...
I don't know. I guess I should watch the movie to be sure. The 1818 novel Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, and the subsequent countless literary, film, and TV adaptations features a reanimated, rebuilt corpse. But the monster wasn't what people typically consider a zombie, i.e. no brain munching. The 1942 film The Living Ghost is another zombie movie with two examples of artificially created zombie characters. There was a third example. There's a 1943 movie about a Canadian nurse who travels to Haiti and has some kind of interaction with zombie servants. I cannot remember the name of that now.
And in H.P. Lovecraft's, I think it's the Reanimator. There's a guy who builds
Herbert West.
Yes, Herbert West. Yeah.
Yes.
Creates a zombie-like creature, a ghoul.
Which are some pretty funny movies.
Mm-hmm. So the modern man-eating monster came about largely as a creation of George Romero, producer and co-writer of the 1968 cult classic Night of the Living Dead. Romero reimagined the zombies as a mysteriously reanimated dead people who had an insatiable lust for violence and murder, whereas some previous zombie movies imagined zombies as living people put into a sort of trance to enslave them to their zombifier. Romero explicitly wanted them to be dead and raised back to life.
So, according to Wikipedia, some critics have seen social commentary in a lot of Romero's work. They saw Night of the Living Dead as a film made in reaction to the turbulence of the 1960s. Dawn of the Dead was a satire on consumerism, and Day of the Dead was a study of the conflict between science and the military. And the last movie in his quadrilogy, whatever that word is, quartet, was Land of the Dead, and they thought that was an examination of class conflict.
And an examination of a series that should have just stopped.
Yeah, they basically built a fortress in that one, I suppose, and kept the bad people out.
All the rich people live in a fortress, tower, hotel sort of thing, and all the poor people are down in slums and they get attacked by zombies.
Something like Mask of the Red Death. All the rich people are going to protect themselves in grandeur.
Something interesting I've read, actually, is that zombies tend to become more popular when there's a liberal government, liberal administration in the U.S., and that vampires become more popular when there's a Republican administration.
Because they are butt-sucking parasites.
Yeah, well, it's because like the vampires represent fear of sexy foreigners, and zombies represent.
Wait, there's a fear of sexy foreigners? When the hell did this happen?
I said fear, not fetish, right? Yeah, sexy foreigners. All about it. All about it.
Zombies represent a fear of like mindless, brainless following type of.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Especially if you're Glenn Beck. I'm just saying.
Just saying. Hashtag just saying. So whether Romero actually intended his movies to be social commentary or not, I'm not really sure. I wouldn't be surprised. But regardless, much of the sine qua non of modern zombie films came from Romero's work. All the stuff that you see in every zombie movie. You know, you have survivors who hole up in the building and board themselves in there. There's some desperate attempt to get access to some sort of resource that is outside of the safe house, and they have to go risk themselves to go get it. There's tension and infighting among all the people who are living. There's a response from the military or militia. There's sometimes they bring a sick person into the safe house who actually turns out to be infected, and there's stuff like that. And a lot of that came from Night of the Living
I
Dead.
think there's some support for the social commentary thing with the fact that the last person to survive of the actual survivors followed in the first movie is the black guy. And he gets shot by the police because they suspect that he killed all the people. Yeah.
Yeah, they just open up a door and shoot him because they thought he was a zombie. So there have been a lot of prominent variations among the different kinds of zombies in literature and films, movies, games, stuff like that. I mean, you've got your slow zombies, there's the fast zombies, zombies that aren't actually zombies, they're just infected with something, they're still alive or whatever. And then you've got the magical zombies, which are zombies who clearly there's no attempt to even try to make things seem scientific. It's just magic.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the most famous ones for the slow zombies, you've got Night of the Living Dead, Shaun of the Dead, which
fucking great movie.
It was absolutely fantastic. There's a Zombie Zone News or something as a website where they polled their readers on what the top 50 best zombie movies of all time were, and Shaun of the Dead came out on top.
It's a fantastic movie. It
really is. It's perfect horror movie and a great comedy also. But there's also the Walking Dead, which is kind of interesting in that it seems to be more of a focus on human behavior in response to zombies than actual zombies.
As I like to call it, it's a panorama of annoying characters and poor decision making.
Yeah.
I've never liked the zombie movies where the zombies are the real threat. I love the zombie movies and series like The Walking Dead where the actual danger are the people who are with you.
Right. Yeah, I think also the first and second Resident Evil movies, the zombies were actual, the people who died and they were resurrected by a virus and they were slow-moving zombies.
The T-virus.
Yeah. And the video game State of Decay was also featured slow-moving zombies. That's a fun game.
It's pretty neat. I've just recently restarted playing that. I think I'm maybe 6 or 7 hours into it. I've never finished it. I thought I'm gonna get through that this time. See what happens. So there's some fast zombies. World War Z, the movie anyway, had fast-moving zombies, very CGI animated
super
zombies.
Fast, sprinting Usain Bolt zombies.
That's right. They have great shoes, those guys.
Not those five-figure things.
Army of Darkness, you want to talk about a great movie, good God. And funny.
This is my boomstick.
Quotable lines for days in that movie. Evil Dead, which is a precursor to Army of Darkness.
Quarantine and Rec, the REC, Quarantine was the American version, I think, of the original Spanish movie. They made a series of the original. I think there were 3 of them. They're pretty good.
I don't know if I ever finished watching Rec. I know I started it. I don't know if I finished it, but I liked what I saw of it. It was pretty neat. There was Pet Sematary, which
I've actually never seen that one.
I never read the book. I saw the movie when I was younger, and I don't know. It's been so long now. I can't really give a good. I imagine now I watched it, I'd be like, God, I would watch anything in the 80s, wouldn't I?
Yeah, it's not all that good a movie.
Yeah, the other, after the first couple of Resident Evil movies, you start getting into people who are infected in a different way, and they're fast-moving zombies.
I don't think I've ever seen any of the other ones.
I've watched them all.
There's a podcast I mentioned recently on here called We're Alive, which I think is, if it hasn't concluded, it's drawing near the conclusion now, and I listened to 2 or 3 seasons of it. I haven't picked it back up. I want to finish it because the story was pretty good. It lulls in a few spots, but moreover, it's really exciting, and it's done in the old radio show style.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, it's really well done. And take a minute and go to IMDb and look at the list of people who have had spots on that show. It's amazing. It's huge. So some of the...
there is one more notable fast zombie.
Oh, yeah?
There is an Android app called Zombies Run.
That's a great...
It's kind of cool. It's an augmented reality sort of thing where it's a zombie game, but the player in the game is you. You're just going out for exercise, getting a run in, and the game determines if there's a whole story about how you're part of this group of runners who run out into a city to get supplies and avoid zombies, and the goal is to keep up your running pace fast enough to outrun the zombies while you're out there. So it actually measures how
That
fast
might
you're
My
even
running.
only
get me running.
The only problem I
That's pretty
had
cool.
with that was this: like, you can do things like you can decide are they slow-moving zombies,
Yeah.
like really congested with slow-moving zombies, or they're fast-moving zombies. You know, how dense are they? The only problem I have with it was this: I did that for a while, and the thing is, like, well, if you want to avoid the zombies, you have to be looking at the map to see where they are. But if you're out running and you're constantly watching your phone, you might trip over
Oh.
something and
Well,
break your freaking neck. So,
there is a version of it. I think that the new version of it, you basically just have to run fast enough. There isn't a map. It's
oh,
just
I
how
got you.
fast you're going. Yeah.
I think that will work great when it comes out on Google Glass or comparative
Oh,
text.
fuck
that
yeah.
would be awesome.
That would be super fun. Maybe I could do that on my bike now. I don't run much anymore because it kind of hurts my back. But yeah, maybe when I'm cycling, I'll try that out again. Be fun. So what about the non-zombies?
Yeah, there are a lot of those also. I mean, you've got like 28 days and 28 weeks later. Both of those, like we were talking about earlier, they're people infected with this virus that just makes them enraged. The movie White Zombie, which is the one we mentioned before with the voodoo priest.
I thought we were talking about bad rock music.
No. There's I Am Legend, which actually in the books originally the monsters were more like vampires, but in the movie I mean I guess they still smelled blood.
The monster was the main character.
Yeah. So yeah, basically. Zombieland, which is funny because they seem so much like zombies, but if you actually pay attention to the explanation of how things happened, it was a mutated mad cow disease virus or prion or something that mutated to affect humans and made them into mad zombies.
Mm-hmm.
So they're technically still alive.
Another really good movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Left 4 Dead, the video game, which is always proclaimed as a zombie game, the whole storyline is that there's a virus that's infecting people, and that the characters you play as are immune to the virus. So these people aren't dying; they're just turning into zombies.
I think there's kind of a conundrum with shooting people who are just infected, I suppose. Just killing like something like a 500 infected in one game of Left 4 Dead. I suppose they could be cured if they only have.
It's hard to cure somebody who's chewing on your arm while you're trying to look for the cure, though.
That brings up a really good point, though. So if you had zombies and they're just people who are infected with some illness, especially if they look particularly human, psychologically we are very much built not to kill one another.
Oh yeah.
You know, it takes a lot of training to get people past that base trigger that stops you from killing someone else.
Yep.
So I imagine that would be very problematic in a case like this. Like, oh, you have to shoot these things and kill them, but they look like me, and it's not even a conscious decision. It's like just inside of you, there instinctively you don't want to do that.
Which would probably help the disease to spread.
Yeah.
So in the video game The Last of Us, the zombies are people infected by a mutant strain of the cordyceps fungus, which takes over their body and brain, changing how they look and behave. And God, I wish I could play this freaking game. I want to play it so bad.
Pretty fantastic. I might send you my copy, John.
I don't have a PS3.
I don't have a PS3.
I may have to pick up one. Now that my 360 kicked the bucket.
Games.
What'd you say?
My 360 kind of kicked the bucket, so I have to do something. So anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic because the story. You start out just as this guy who's experiencing the fall of his civilization, as you see like buildings. He lives in a town, a house on the edge of a big city, and you're seeing like buildings exploding in the city, and you run into the city to try to get your friend, and people are panicking and rushing in hordes away from these fast-moving people who like pounce on them and start tearing into them, and there's cars flipping over and houses burning and buildings falling over, and it's fantastic fun.
God, I gotta play this game.
Then you're 20 years into the future, and it's the rubble that's left over, and the American government has kind of quarantined people into these little cities, and you have to go out and try to survive while you're looking for people, and it's a lot of fun.
PC gamer through and through.
PC Game Master Race.
So the magic zombies. So there's Weekend at Bernie's 2, which I'd forgotten even existed.
Yes.
Probably best.
Yeah, in the first Weekend at Bernie's,
What? There's a second.
Apparently so.
The first Weekend at Bernie's movie, there's a guy who's these two guys' boss, and he gets murdered, and they try to make it look like he's not dead. First, I don't remember the reasons why they do that, but they have to avoid the guy who killed him. And in the second movie, however, a voodoo curse resurrects this guy's body, and he can't talk or anything, but he's moving around and like dancing as he moves. It's really just ridiculous. He dances and walks everywhere.
On that note, The Serpent and the Rainbow, the John Carpenter movie, which is an adaptation of the kind of controversial book by, I don't remember who the researcher was, but that's another case of magical zombies, and in this case specifically Haitian zombies.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of that one.
Yeah, check out, just Google The Serpent and the Rainbow and first listen to about that particular book, and then about the movie or watch the movie. I think also they talked about that same thing in the Stuff You Should Know episode about zombies.
Interesting. Yeah, there's one last category here that's pretty hilarious. The quintessential Nazi zombies. So there are
a lot more of those than I realized.
Yeah, there are. I was kind of surprised.
There's a shit ton of zombie Nazi things.
Yeah, I could only think of a couple, but then I went online and people had lists of like the top 10 Nazi zombie movies, and I was like, whoa, there's 10 of them? Yeah, there's not just in movies either. You have them in video games. Like the original 3D shooter game, Wolfenstein, was based upon Nazi zombies. And the Call of Duty games, there's been a couple of them where add-on downloadable content has been zombie Nazi missions where you're fighting zombie Nazis.
And zombie Nazis in the Stick of Truth.
I did not know
South
that.
Park game.
But yeah, there's
Sorry.
As for movies, there's Zombies of War, Oasis of the Zombies, Shockwaves, Zombie Lake, War of the Dead, and Dead Snow, which I've seen, and is actually kind of fun.
I have as well. It was pretty good.
I think that one, the Nazi zombies are guarding a cache of Nazi gold, and people discover it, and the zombies start chasing them until they get rid of all the gold.
Don't forget, South Park has Nazi zombies, right?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that video game. But spoiler alert, McElroy, sorry. You haven't gotten there yet.
That's all right.
So, let's talk about some survival plans. Let's dispense with the realism for a bit and have some fun with the zombie apocalypse planning, shall we? Bears noting that when drawing up your zombie contingency plan, you would be wise to bear in mind that you don't know for certain what manner of zombie you're dealing with. Could be the Night of the Living Dead slow zombies, the 28 days later we can all sprint like Usain Bolt zombies, the Resident Evil, I don't know, bad melodrama zombies. With that in mind, an adaptable plan that best fits the most common elements of all manner of zombie infestation is likely the best. One could, of course, just run with what they consider the most likely, so if you think it's going to be Night of the Living Dead zombies, then plan appropriately. I'd like to note that I'm of the idea that in a zombie apocalypse, you're basically just fighting the clock. You're going to lose eventually, so survival for another hour, day, week, month, year, that's the goal in and of itself. It's not to rebuild society.
That depends on how you define winning, really. I think, dying of a Cinnabon overdose, in my case specifically, I think that's winning, basically. Maybe only an hour, but it's an hour of pure bliss. And what more could I want? What more could I want?
When it comes to Cinnabon and how much you love Cinnabon, can you kind of understand the zombie fascination with brains?
Yes, because I would do just about all of that to get a Cinnabon. That's true.
Civilization fell today as Brandy Madison ran out of Cinnabons.
Went from mall to mall, stalking from mall to mall looking for a Cinnabon. And now they have them at McDonald's.
So first I want to talk about groups of survivors versus solitude. So what are the benefits and risks of either banding together or going in alone? I'm of the opinion that mobility is key, which we'll get to in a little bit, but I have no particular qualms with groups versus solitude. I don't know if you guys do. So thoughts, anyone?
I would definitely go for a group because I have a certain set of skills and they are not very useful in
Liam
Liam Neeson's in this group.
Yes. I don't know.
You know, there might be a danger in groups too, in that the more people, you'd be more visible, the zombies would be more likely to notice you.
Yeah, more potential points of failure too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue
But I think that
is in a lot of movies, whenever you have a guy who's on his own who runs into a group, somehow that guy always ends up dying. He's been fine on his own until he meets up with people and then he dies.
So if Hollywood has taught us anything,
Yes.
But I guess you can go with the idea that you don't have to outrun the zombies; you just got to outrun your buddies.
yeah,
smart person.
hamstring somebody that's a little slower and take off running.
Did you just suggest tying hams to people to attract the zombies?
Yeah, well, see, you get really
Hamstringing?
big hams and good rope so that it won't break, and that's going to slow your buddy down because now you've wrapped this string around him with a big ham on it. He can't run as fast as you can. You're attracting zombies and people who don't.
Now, come on, John. How likely is it that you're going to have a supply of hams?
Who wouldn't? I'm a vegetarian and I have a supply of hams in the garage.
Do you use that for when you turn into a werewolf? I mean, what is going on here?
I don't know. I'm unprepared to follow up with that joke. I wasn't going
That's my
anywhere.
bear plan. That's when John and I go camping. That's my bear plan. How I'm going to survive the bear attack right there.
Tie hams to John?
Yeah, just run. I don't need that run the bear. Just have to run him.
To go on a slight tangent, I have a thing about I have this small fear of bears, so that's part of why I'm not big on camping in the wilderness where there might be bears. But Brandy has given me lots of instruction on bear safety, if you will, and she's told me a couple of things. One, that bears and other predators do not like smoke, because I was like, hey, maybe a big fire is a good idea. And she's like, well, it's the smoke that really draws them away. So I was like, oh, okay, so I'll have a huge stack of green branches to burn, create more smoke. And also she said peeing around your campsite's a good idea. So here's my plan so far. So I'm going to make sure there's a lot of firewood to make a lot of smoke, and I'm going to drink cases of Red Bull and pee in a large circle around the campsite. And that's my bear protection plan. Nothing to do with
I've heard that bears can't run downhill very well.
I probably can't either.
I think somebody told you that so that you would not run away from a bear that was coming after you downhill because they thought maybe you'd be the one who was eaten.
So moving on from that, I don't know if we've decided. So groups versus solitude. I guess that's one of those deals you just kind of have to go with. Like
every movie I've seen where they have groups of people trying to survive with zombies, somebody somewhere fucks it up, and I think I'm probably going to do better on my own.
I'm of the opinion that a small group of people, a very small, tight-knit group of people, is not a bad idea. Also, solitude can be pretty maddening after a while. Having no one to talk to but yourself, that will wear you down psychologically.
And my invisible friend Steve.
Wilson. I have my friend Spalding with me.
Barry, my bud. Other Barry.
Let's talk about equipment. Now, this is items that would be useful and possibly easily transportable. So, what are some things? Like, I would guess obviously something to carry your things in some kind of backpack or duffel bag or something. I mean, the list could be enormous, but if you're going to stay mobile, then you're going to want a smaller list of things. So I guess what are the key pieces of equipment, weapons aside, because we'll get to those a little later. So
some kind of multi-tool, let's say a Swiss knife type of thing, or a Leatherman or something, because it will probably save you.
Or no, have a Finnish army knife.
It's just a knife with a blade, so it would be all that useful.
It's a Swiss Army knife with a Finnish flag on it. I'm thinking something to start a fire with. They have those. I don't know what they're made of. It's some kind of metal. There's one that you strike, like you use the backside of a blade from a knife and strike on it. That will cause sparks. Magnesium. I don't know if that's flint or not. What is it?
Magnesium. You can get the little magnesium.
That's it. Yeah.
Strikers. Yeah.
But something that you can start a fire with for warmth and possibly for light, if you think that's a good idea.
This may be also a weapon, but I'd get an axe because that's definitely a useful tool.
Yeah.
Or a hand, or some kind of portable handsaw, maybe. Yeah. Flashlight, perhaps.
At least some kind of a light. Yeah.
Yeah. What
A
else?
lockpick set, so you can break into
lockpick set.
houses and get canned food and stuff.
If Fallout has taught me anything, a good supply of bobby pins and a screwdriver is all you need for that.
And some bottle caps.
A Leopard
I
5
already have tons of
German-made
bottle caps.
Panzerwagen.
Anything else? Maybe a tent and/or a sleeping bag. Yeah.
Sure.
Eh,
But that's not
Blanket
all
at
that's
least?
necessary except in Finland, where it's absolutely necessary. So an Arctic sleeping bag that gives you protection from like -30.
I'm thinking some good rope. And have you seen these? They're like hammock tents that people will use to like hang off the side of mountains and sleep in them. My thought is something like find large enough trees to be able that you're able to climb somehow, and with some rope and make some kind of hammock of some sort, or just a hammock, and sleep up in a tree. Because I'm assuming zombies can't climb trees very well.
I
Usually.
don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you're learning on the go in a case like this. So.
I think this is just too much work. I would just let myself be a zombie, like, immediately. If civilization is falling to a horde of zombies, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to be a
So
zombie.
I will appeal to your sense of desperation and be like, look, man, we're all going to die anyway, right? So we might as well just let it happen. And you're like, yeah, we should. You're like, okay, you stay here, I'm
I
out.
would rather not live through a world in which I was constantly fighting off hordes of undead people.
I guess I can understand that. Let's assume for a moment that we're going to.
That's
A lot of the things you'd want are the same things you'd want to have when just going out camping.
What's that?
Do you have any zombies?
A lot of the things you'd want to have are just the same things you'd want to have when going out camping.
Yep.
Since I'm not much on camping, yeah, that's why I don't really know what a lot
I
of
want
these
some zombie repellent spray.
zombie repellent spray.
It's like Batman and his shark repellent spray.
So what, like something that smells dead already, I guess, maybe?
Yes.
If smell helps, I
Yeah,
suppose.
they did that in the Walking Dead. They smeared people with the viscera and all the goop from the zombies. They didn't
tasty.
smell them.
Well, let's hit the next point, so I can put my plan into fruition. I can explain you why I chose what I chose.
Carcass
Go
by
for it.
Burberry. Okay, our next category is location, static versus roaming. I am of the opinion that prey stays. So you want to stay alive, you keep on the move.
Makes sense.
Building yourself, getting some kind of fortified palace or some kind of stronghold really just invites, hordes of zombies to pile around whatever you're holed up in and waiting till either you starve to death or try to make a run for it. So thoughts?
Because I have my axe and my friends, we're going to build a fortress. In Finland, we have shit ton of forest, and so I would choose a point where we have a choke point. Basically, both sides would be lakes, because we have a shit ton of lakes. We would hit the forest. We would stay there. We would have ample supply of fresh fish from the lakes, and then we would have the protection of a wooden palisade we could cut down with my axe, and we could lift the
And my bow.
my
I
friends.
agree wholeheartedly, Erno. It sounds a lot like Michigan. There's tons of lakes and fresh water and food supply and lots of forests, and my family has a camp, and I think I agree with you. I want to hole up and build a fortress. Agree completely.
We would live in northern Michigan and everyone would just live in a pile.
So you're first going with the assumption you have enough time to build the fortress.
Well, in my case, the
there's
fortress
not many
is there.
people in Finland. We would have the time while we wait
Yeah.
the zombies from, let's say, St. Petersburg to arrive.
Yeah, the zombies would be busy in Detroit, and meanwhile, I'm building up the camp that's already there. There's already a house. There's already, an outhouse. There's already all kinds of things in place.
So since my move to Pennsylvania, I've had to kind of tweak my zombie survival plan, which I've had now for over 15 years. My buddies and I used to sit around on the weekends and BS about, well, what do you do in this case? What do you do in that case? And so here, the population is really dense. I'm living in what's essentially the mountains now, and I'm much nearer the coast than I used to be. I used to be in the middle of Oklahoma, which is very much the middle of the country, and So I'm taking those things into consideration now. And I'm still of the opinion that, especially here in a very densely populated area, that getting away from the densely populated area is a good idea as quickly as possible. So I'm going to stick with the stay roaming.
I've never made a plan, so I have no idea what to do.
What? We need to talk, sir.
I'm a very pragmatic man. I plan for things that are going to happen.
I'm going to tell you the secret now. Like, I have
revoke your dork card. You know that, right? They're going to take away your nerd membership.
Hey,
I have, with a few friends of mine, I have a long-standing disaster plan, which covers all kinds of different things. That includes where would. I hear you cackling in there. Don't you shut up.
That's fantastic. That's going to be in the recording. That's going to be in the podcast.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I'm just moving on. Let's talk about transportation, shall we? So what's best? A huge...
No, please,
what kind of
please.
segue is that? A segue would be, speaking of segues, let's talk about transportation.
No. Back to, you have all kinds of plans. So this is like, there are many of you, so we have different places we
There's
can
a
go
small
to.
number of us.
Are you a
that have,
prepper?
certain places you might meet were there to be a big disaster, so...
Is there
we
a
gonna
forum
rendezvous
somewhere for these
somewhere?
people?
Well, I
Colorado.
have portable solar panels so I can keep my MP3 player charged and everything.
I hate you guys.
I hate you.
And the world's gotta have my tunes.
Speaking of segues, what about transportation?
You go to hell and you die.
So how about a huge fortified truck, a fast yet exposed motorcycle, a bicycle, your own 2 feet? Let's talk for a few minutes about what would likely be the best mode of transportation.
I would make shoes out of zombies and walk in them.
Nice.
I'm thinking I have a nice
corpse was made
cyclocross
for
bike that
walking.
should be able to get me away from all the scary in a hurry.
I use my trusty Borat. My Volkswagen Borat.
Borat?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Very nice zombies.
I would
This is number
skateboard
2
away from
zombie
those
in all of
zombies.
Finland.
Are you telling me there's actually a vehicle called a Borat?
Yeah, mine is. It's actually Bora without the T,
okay.
but I found a T from a store and glued it on, so now mine's Borat.
That is
Pictures
awesome.
or it didn't happen. Pictures or it didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah. It consumes very little diesel, so it's pretty economical. So it could be used for a long time, even if you wouldn't have a steady source of gasoline or diesel, in my case.
Apparently the Bora is also known as the Jetta, so it's the same car.
Yeah.
So I'm of the opinion, especially in densely populated areas, that the majority of people are probably going to try to get somewhere in their cars, and so the roads are going to gridlock most likely.
Yes, that's
In that
actually
case-
That's why the perfect plan is to take off in a hot air balloon.
Yes!
twirling your long mustaches around your finger and cackling as you go.
A really big kite that you can fly on.
Actually, in the game The Last of Us, this is what happens to your character at the beginning when he's trying to escape the city for a farm somewhere or a safe house somewhere. They try to avoid the city and wind up using the same plan everybody else does, and all the roads get blocked off.
I guess I could see that. So my thought was, in the gridlock traffic, something like a bicycle or just being on foot is not necessarily a bad idea. A bike, you can get between the cars that are gridlocked a lot easier.
But here we have to contend with the choke points that are the rivers, the tunnels, we have that situation as far as there being a lot of bottlenecks, and you absolutely cannot circumvent them otherwise.
I have resigned myself to the idea that, I might not be able to go anywhere here in Pittsburgh if that were to happen. I might just be stuck here. So let's talk a minute about foodstuffs, MREs, foraging and hunting, farming. How will you feed yourself when Zeke the zombie is looking to fill up on your brains?
Well,
Mike
as I'm
Bowler, I
being
think
a
you have
zombie-
some experience with this, don't you? Pretend like you do.
Pretend like I do? Well, MREs aren't too bad, except they don't last too long. I would think if civilization collapsed, you could probably go through. I mean, and where I live, I've got cornfields. I can live off of. I could probably do a pretty good job stocking up on grains and stuff like that. I can always hit the local grocery stores. Hopefully they're not too overrun. I'm just trying to think.
Yeah,
as
I
far
don't
as
think
foods,
the
but
grocery
yeah.
stores would make it very long in a zombie apocalypse, though. I think
What is
everybody would
the-
have the same idea.
How long are canned goods generally fresh for, or edible for? Do you know? It's not indefinite.
A few years.
About
Yeah.
3
Some
years.
of them, yeah.
I knew a group of people, a family, who were all of the opinion that canned goods never ever go bad. I asked, like, never, no matter the amount of time. They said, nope, they never go bad once they're canned.
Oh, that's bad. Oh, no.
Huh. It's like, well,
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah, there's a reason we
Well,
don't
you just
send
check for
canned
the-
goods to the space shuttle.
Well played, sir.
So, I don't know, for food.
I guess
As
for
I
me,
said, I'm planning to become a zombie, so for me there's going to be plenty of food.
right? Yeah. Well, that kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Is like you're just buying time anyway. Eventually, the zombies are going to win. So I guess you could just say fuck it in the first place. I'm of the opinion like some kind of maybe MREs or something similar, canned goods, packaged goods to begin with, but then certainly foraging, and I guess foraging and hunting would have to come into play for me if I was going to stay mobile. I don't think the vegetarian lifestyle is going to work in the zombie apocalypse, presumably. So lastly, in our survival points is the weapons. Loud attention-grabbing guns, less noisy projectiles. Up close and personal with a blade or a bludgeoning implement. How can one best be prepared to confront the menace of corpses who don't realize that they're supposed to stay dead?
I plan to be using my limbs and my teeth to fight off the humans, so...
Well played, sir. The counter perspective. I'm of the opinion a gun of some sort is okay to have for a last resort, but I think otherwise they're far too attention grabbing. They will raise the attention of other survivors and also of other zombies. So I guess the less noisy projectile is something like crossbows or a bow and arrow or
Yeah, I think if your aim is good, those are going to be
a sling.
The thing about weapons, I mean, bladed weapons are okay as long as you have the strength to cleave through something with a bladed weapon. But if you're talking about like if you're trying to stab a zombie in the face, if he's not sufficiently decayed, you're gonna get your knife stuck in his face.
Right.
Probably. I mean, just the likelihood of trying to get through a skull with a knife, it's not as easy as people think it is.
Well, if Hollywood has taught me anything, a good swing of a machete or a sword will go right through the middle of someone's head cleanly at that.
You have a nice, clean surgical cut. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've said, this isn't exactly weapons, but the idea of like, okay, so even if I'm going to stay mobile, some kind of quick traps of some sort or something to slow down approaching predators is a good idea. I guess that kind of goes along in this, and especially if you are building a fortress or holding up somewhere, certainly some kind of traps.
Pitfalls and punji poles and that sort of thing. Something that you're going to disable their legs or take them out of commission.
Barbed wire, razor wire.
I guess it wouldn't be painful for them, but they get tangled in both of those, yeah?
Yeah, but they'll slow them down, then you can, at will, pop. Because like a crossbow, you're going to have trouble reloading it. I mean, a bow would work okay. You could probably get a few shots off. But then again, you got to have some distance. If they're up and close, knife might be okay. A sword or a katana. Hopefully, you're in a large area so you can swing because you got to get a katana. You have to. You can't. It's not a stabbing weapon. It's a swinging weapon. So you got to have. You got to get some momentum to get through. If you're going to try to get through the body. I mean, I'm partial to shotgun because it's up close. If you're stuck in a building, having to deal with it, you'll
need a good EMT after that.
Yeah, I think that the issue with with weapon selection, I think bladed weapons are going to be hard to use. Guns, you have limited ammo. I think blunt force trauma to the head is probably going to be your best option. You have things like baseball
Or
bats, golf clubs, any large object that you can get your hands on, a rock, a chunk of concrete.
to the limbs.
Yeah, just
Force
anything
trauma
that
to
can
the
just
limbs.
anywhere.
That's what I was going to say. I'm of the idea that a machete is a good idea to have one around. It's multiple uses, but something like tire iron, a crowbar, just a lead pipe, something that you can get a good swing and a blunt force hit, possibly snap a limb to slow the approaching predator down.
Yeah, I
Good
mean,
idea.
it's the thing you hear about people stabbing somebody to death, and
It wasn't
just stabbing
It
them
wasn't one
dozens of
quick
times.
stab generally.
No, no. And the thing is that when you're killing a person, they feel pain. So if you're dealing with somebody, a corpse that's not feeling any kind of pain whatsoever, you stab him in the chest a dozen times, he's just going to keep walking right at you. He's not going to care. So you
Right.
got to make sure that you're going for a spot that's going to kill him quickly and without too much effort and without the possibility of you losing your knife, so that you can't use it on other zombies.
Hmm.
It's like Brandy's saying in the chat here. It's about the mechanics and the physical structure of the body, and that's absolutely right. You got to know where you can get the knife in to do a lot of damage.
Some Rex Kwando might help you with that. Just break the wrist, walk away. All right, let's move on to a couple of whats, shall we? These are a couple of zombie-centric scientific whats.
Yes. So something I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the game The Last of Us. In that game, what you're infected with is something called the cordyceps fungus. There's this fungus that takes over people's brains and changes the way that they behave. Well, this is actually based on a real thing. There's an article on Wired.com from back in last September called "The Zombie Ant and the Fungus That Controls Its Mind," and it's about a fungus called Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, which attaches itself to ants after spores fall on them or they pick them up by walking across them or whatever. The spore builds up pressure until there's enough pressure to punch through the ant's exoskeleton, and then it starts infesting the ant's body. It actually fills up like all the space in the ant's body, and they expand to the point that their exoskeleton is almost cracking, and it eats into their brain. And there's chemical manipulation that the fungus uses that directs the infested ant to some very precise locations in forests. This article says the ants are manipulated to bite onto very specific locations on the underside of a leaf, the main vein of a leaf, leaves which are oriented north-northwest, roughly 25 centimeters off the ground. All of this happens with a remarkable precision around solar noon, making this one of the most complex examples of parasite manipulation of host behavior. Once the ant attaches to the leaf, what it does is basically the fungus makes the ant's jaws lock shut on the leaf so that they remain shut even after the ant has died, and it just sort of latches onto the leaf. It dies, and a stalk of the fungus erupts out of the back of its head, and a little fruiting body of fungus pops up, which then rains down spores around the dead ant, around the fellow worker ants, which starts the whole process all over again. And this fungus actually infects a huge variety of different animals. It's not just insects. There's actually, I'll have to double check on this because it might be wrong, but I remember reading that basically mammals are the only kind of animal that cannot be affected by cordyceps funguses. That there are all sorts of different funguses, different species of cordyceps type fungi that will infect everything else. Like there's the bird infecting stuff. It's just really freaky, and the idea that this stuff could infect humans is it's been the basis of not just that video game. There's also been short stories written about the perspective of a guy who had been infected by this, and he feels an uncontrollable urge to climb to the top of a building and sort of stand there until his head explodes.
Yeah, that reminds me of there's another cordyceps. Well, I think it's a cordyceps fungal infection in ants that causes the ant to climb to the top of stalks of grass or flowers, and it'll stand up on its hind legs and wave its head and antennae around to attract birds. And so a bird will eat the ant, and then it digests the ant, and
Yes.
when the bird poops while flying, and so the fungus spreads again. Other ants come in contact with the fungus, and the process repeats. I had thought that I had heard that in Radiolab, and maybe I had, but I couldn't find that episode.
So I'm looking on Wikipedia here, and it says cordyceps is a genus of fungi that has about 400 identified species, and there are many that have yet to be described. All species of them are endoparasitoids, which means that they're all parasitic species, mostly on insects and other arthropods. But there are a few that are parasitic on other fungi and other species. And there are actually forms of Chinese traditional medicine in which people eat the mushrooms that form from cordyceps. Yeah, it's in Chinese and Tibetan mushrooms, and it's kind of terrifying to think that people are eating this stuff.
Huh. Well, I guess if mammals aren't susceptible to it, then safe enough. But yeah, still a little scary, I suppose. I'd like to mention that in the chat, Dumbass trumped all of us on our weapons plan by saying that he plans on building a death ray. Yes!
Of course.
You're going to get like a bunch of solar panels to collect sun power and...
Apparently
Death ray.
There was actually a song in 2010 called Cephalic Carnage. I guess that's the name of the band. The song is called Cordyceps Humanus, in which a mutant strain of cordyceps infects humans, and the song's an apocalyptic vision in which nature takes revenge upon humanity.
I have never heard this song, but I'm going to guess the vocals sound something like...
Oh my god, I forgot about this. An episode of Fringe had a psychic strain of cordyceps that communicated with a young boy through some weird emotional connection.
Yeah. That was a really good series, at least when I watched it.
Yeah.
I think I watched the first 2.5 seasons of it, and I have yet to finish it.
After that.
Oh, did it never get better?
Yeah, it turned into an X-Files kind of thing instead of... Yeah, it was weird.
Well, I liked what I saw, but anyway, it was good. So our next what is... this is something I had first heard about in Radio Lab and have read about since. Zombie roaches lose free will due to wasp venom. Now, bears noting that technically neither of these cases are zombies, but similar to. In this case, the emerald cockroach wasp, or jewel wasp, injects its venom initially into a thoracic ganglion and injects venom to mildly and reversibly paralyze the front legs of the cockroach. And the roach now being temporarily immobilized, it's then stung in a really precise spot on its brain, and it's the section that controls escape reflex. And as a result, the roach will start grooming itself extensively and then become sluggish and fail to show normal escape responses. I guess the wasp just waits for it to finally stop moving around. So then the wasp chews off half of each of the roach's antennae, leads the roach to its burrow by pulling on its antennae. So I always imagine this very cartoonish, like the wasp is on the back of the roach, like, come on, like pulling on one antenna or the other. I don't know, it's funnier in my head. Anyhow, so it leads it to... Yeah, try. It's using one of its back legs to smack the roach on the ass to get it to move. So it leads it to its burrow, lays an egg on the roach's abdomen, and then blocks the entrance of the burrow with pebbles. And since the roach is now, its escape reflexes has been disabled, this is really more to keep other predators out than the roach in. So now with its escape reflex inhibited, the roach just kind of lays around while the larva chews its way into the roach's abdomen, feeds on its internal organs, and emerges victorious, or something like that. So there's that. That's pretty fascinating. Gall wasps. I don't know what gall wasps are.
Gross. Very gross. So guys, what are some of your favorite zombie stories?
Oh, I have
Movies, games, TV, all that kind of stuff. What's your favorite?
I guess my single favorite? Give me a second here. 28 Days Later was a really good movie. Shaun of the Dead. 28 Days Later was good in the kind of more serious approach, and Shaun of the Dead is just fucking fantastic. It's so funny. Books-wise, like I said, I recently read that Zone 1. It was okay. I don't know that I would say it's my favorite. World War Z and the Zombie Survival Guide, both by Max Brooks, those are also fantastic, and I highly recommend. What about you, Mr. McElroy? What do you have?
Well, there's a couple of books that I've been thinking of. There's one trilogy called the News Flesh Trilogy by Myra Grant, and it's about this couple of young people who are living in the post-apocalypse world, which is it was kind of an apocalypse that didn't really have to be stuttered out. No, the apocalypse kind of sputtered out before it really began. I mean, there were still a lot of people who were killed by a zombie infestation that was the result of two genetically modified viruses combining into one. One of them was supposed to be a cure for cancer, and one was a cure for the common cold. And the two of them together somehow mutated into this thing that reanimates the dead and takes over their brains and keeps them alive and drives them to act like zombies. But anyway, so these two people are a brother and sister who run a news blog, which is kind of taken over the whole mainstream media, and they get picked to follow around these presidential candidate in the U.S. presidential election, and come to find out that there's a conspiracy going on to use weaponized forms of this virus to take out people on the side of the take out people that their political opponents find inconvenient.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
I
a
started
trilogy about that.
I started the first book. I never finished it. It was just like, I don't know. It didn't grab me. I might try it again at some point.
Yeah.
I may not have gotten far enough into it. Yeah, I was making the joke about the brother and sister seem a little extra close for brother and sister. That's all I'm saying.
They're adopted, so they're not really brother and sister. So they're very close brother and sister. They're not physically intimate or anything like that.
Newsflash trilogy by Brazzers.
Oh God, no. There's also a comedic romance novel called Breathers: A Zombie's Lament, which is all about how this guy was in a severe car accident and he died, and then he wakes up 3 days later finding himself walking down the road. And it's all told in the first person about how zombies have just kind of been a thing throughout history, and they don't have any rights as people, and people will go around and attack them, and frat boys will try to dismember them, or if they get out of line, then the government will take them and use them for experimentation. And it's about this guy kind of falling in love with another zombie, and eventually they discover that by eating human flesh they can regain some of their human attributes, like they can heal their wounds, or they can they stop decaying quite so much. It's kind of funny, but I don't know. I haven't finished that yet. My girlfriend highly recommends that. She said it's one of her favorites. Oh, and Shaun of the Dead, favorite zombie movie of all time, hands down.
Yeah, I think I probably have to go with that as my favorite zombie movie. Yeah, there's a number of good ones, but I don't think any top Shaun of the Dead. So, Dumbass, what about you? Any favorite zombie stories, games, movies, books?
I've read a number of interesting zombie books. I mean, there's of course your standard stuff like the Max Brooks type zombies, which are kind of interesting. But I like the books that kind of play around with the genre a little. Like there's Peter Cline's X series, which is about superheroes dealing with a zombie apocalypse.
Oh yeah, X Heroes. I got that, the first book in that series.
Yeah, it's pretty good. There's a lot of people are playing around with it. There's even like that zombie love story. What's that called? Warm Bodies. I've read the book. I haven't seen the movie.
I liked it.
Yeah, and then there's Yahtzee Crawshaw's Mogworld, which is kind of a alternate magic world type zombie type of thing, which kind of weird but interesting. And I just really like the ones that play around with it, not like just standard zombie stuff. How would you survive the end of the world?
Right. How about you, Mr. Bowler?
I just like the game. Left 4 Dead. I got Left 4 Dead 2. I kind of like that one. I did like the Evil Dead, and I like the Romero films. And that's about the extent of my zombie exposure.
I think I like Left 4 Dead just for the fact that I can go around swinging a katana as waves of zombies rush at me. So.
Oh.
Yeah, the chainsaw. I like the chainsaw.
Here's one I hadn't thought of before. What about the Reavers in Firefly and Serenity? Those kind of the Reavers from Firefly and Serenity. What? Your geek card is going to be revoked, sir.
I did not like Firefly at all.
I read a Star Wars book, Red Harvest. No, it wasn't Red Harvest. It was Death Troopers, which was kind of a
zombie troopers on a space starship.
Yeah, it was wasn't like a prison ship, wasn't it? Something like that. And
Yeah.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it a 4.5, maybe. It wasn't horrible, but yeah, it was. It was not one I would not recommend so much. Yeah, so there's that. There's the Flood from Halo. It's kind of zombie-ish.
Parasitic spory kind of zombie thing, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very awesome. That's all I can think of at the moment.
Does Brandy not want to give us her favorites?
Brandy, she had some technical difficulties, so she's only in the chat. She was saying a minute ago, though, to go back a minute, she was thinking about Toxoplasma gondii, which is the...
Gondii, yeah.
Gondii, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the... Not Toxoplasma gondii, which is the non-violent...
The non-violent parasite.
That's right. Toxoplastic gondii, which is one that it changes the behavior of mice and rats such that they seek out the smell of urine from cats, which is fucking crazy. But
yeah, Toxoplasma gondii will make you go on a hunger strike until people eat you.
Right. Yes. So I guess that's all we got this week for zombies. Mr. Bowler, tell us what you got coming up next on Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy.
Oh, I got no real plans. I might be doing TWA 800. Hopefully everyone checked out the Big Gardner Snake conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty fantastic. I laughed really hard.
I tried.
So, Dumbass, what do you got coming up next for us?
Well, let's see. Does your dog need a sex toy? Are you a negligent owner if you don't buy one? Find out on Amateur Skeptics.
I'm horrified.
If you're a dog owner, isn't your leg, like, by default, a dog sex toy?
Well, let me send you an image. Hold on.
No, that's okay. Okay.
Some dogs, I'm not going to name names, some dogs will grab a random shoe and rage fuck it while you're away because you didn't take the dog with you. I'm just saying.
Oh my!
Oh, what is this image we have here? Let's see.
When you thought it couldn't get any worse.
It is actually a sex toy for a dog.
It's like a little fake. Oh my god! It even has a hole. Oh no!
Oh,
humpy.
this is the greatest terrible thing I've ever seen.
This should just be called a humpy, I think.
A humpity.
Oh Jesus Christ! No.
Oh, that is fantastic and terrible. Oh, wow. So there's that.
Hi, everybody!
I guess that's going to do it for us. So join us again next week.
And remember, your zombie survival guide is not going to save you.
Should we get Erno to record that?
Sure.